All right, thanks for joining us today for our launch webinar for what we think is an exciting new product. And as we previewed it across the country at different trade shows and with our beta group that did such a great job of checking it out for us, there has definitely been a lot of excitement. So before we dive into that product, and it'll only take me a minute, I'm just going to do a real quick review of our Horner controller lines, just to remind everybody what our main product lines are. And then we're going to go right to the main event. So we're going to talk about the new micro line of modular controllers is what we're calling these new CPUs. We'll go through the features and functions. We'll talk about some of the applicable industry. And then we've got a couple other little nuggets of Horner product news that we'll cover. And then we'll do questions and answers. So one reminder, actually a couple reminders, in the user interface portion of your screen, the big marker user interface, there's a couple tabs I'll call your attention to. One is the Q&A tab. So if you have any questions whatsoever at any point in the program today, we encourage you to type those questions in the Q&A section. And then secondly, there is a handout tab as well, and that does have a download that you can download, a PDF that you can download at any point during the program today, which is the new sales sheet or the new comparison guide, which includes our new product today. All right, let's go ahead and dive in, and we will get to questions and answers at the end as well. All right, here we go. Okay, so just a quick reminder of the Horner product line. So what we're known for, as most of you are aware, are all-in-one controllers. It's a component that combines the functionality of a traditional PLC with a built-in touchscreen, typically, with often built-in I/O and lots of connectivity options, all configured and programmed with a single free all-in-one software package. We have three primary all-in-one controller product lines. We have the Micro OCS series, which is what we would call our entry level, but from a functionality standpoint, it definitely has a lot more functionality than a lot of entry level products out there in the market today, but it's our most affordable product line. And then we have our XL Prime series, which really is kind of the bread and butter continuation of our very long time popular XL series product. So the XL Prime was designed so any existing users of the XL series could easily transition to a product line, which was really a seamless transition with almost no work whatsoever. We modernized the internal components. So even though it looks the same on the outside, it eliminated things like rechargeable batteries, which are always a pain in the neck. And it also, of course, allowed us to continue to manufacture the product for years and years to come. So that's our XL Prime series. And then our Canvas series is really our top end. That's where we have our newest technology, a dual core processor that has one core dedicated for logic and networking and the other one for graphics. It's got the most advanced graphics that we offer. So those are our three primary all-in-one controller lines. Now, a much lesser known product line that's also been there for a little while is our kind of controller only product line. So this product line does not have a screen. It's called the RCC. And its origins are a little more interesting in terms of, basically this is the combination of like 3 or 4 special projects that we did for specific OEMs who had a need for specific controllers without a screen. And then once those projects were delivered, we also made those products available to the general market. So RCCs they basically, for all intents and purposes, are traditional micro PLCs. And we currently have 4 models total, but 3 that are truly general purpose. So that's the only series we offer today without any kind of screen. But that is changing because we have our launch today of the new micro modular controllers. And they're called modular controllers because they are controllers like our all-in-ones are, but they're truly modular. And they're called micro modular controllers because they fit very nicely in the micro family or the micro line of products that we already sell. So even though these products don't have screens on them or touch screens or anything like that, the specifications, the connectivity, the programmability, the pricing levels are all very much in common with the existing micro line. They've got plenty of memory built in, actually more than your typical micro product. and more built-in I/O than what you'll find with a lot of similar products on the market today, at least, micro-style PLCs. And they can cover not only simple applications, but actually applications that are quite a bit more than that. One of the models, we'll talk about it in detail, has quite a bit of I/O built into it, but both models have the ability to add even more I/O through local expansion through a backplane connector right on the side of the unit. So really, these products are geared towards applications that just don't need a screen. So we still get asked quite a bit for products in applications where they say, we really don't need a screen for this application. Sometimes what we'll do, very successfully I might add, is steer a customer towards a small DIN rail mounted controller like an XLE or an XL4 Prime, that even though it does have a screen, it can be mounted on DIN rail and it can act as a terrific controller, and you can use the screen for diagnostic purposes. But these particular products here are designed from the ground up to be mounted on DIN rail and to be used without a screen. Now let's take a look at one of the two new models we're releasing today, and that is the Micro CPU250. So this is kind of a look at the different hardware features on the front of the unit. So like all Horner products that are, of the last 20 years, really, the product has a micro SD slot. So you can do everything you can use micro SD for. You can do data logging directly to a memory card. You can use the memory card to load a program in the field without dragging your laptop out to the site, all those sorts of things and more. And if you do drag your laptop out to the site, it's got a USB-C port for programming purposes. So because it's such a new product, everybody expects USB-C these days, and rightfully so. And the Micro CPU250 does have that. Just like all micro products, except for one, we have an Ethernet port, 2 serial ports on a single connector, and a CAN port. Okay, so very much like you would see on an X4, an X7, or an X10 in the micro family. From a power standpoint, the CPUs go one better than their brothers in the micro line. They are powerable by either 12 volts or 24 volts. With the micro touchscreens that are available, the Micro OCS touchscreens, only the 10-inch model can be powered from 12 volts. The rest of them require 24 volts only. Okay, because the product doesn't have any kind of local screen, we have included a selector switch for selecting between run mode and stop mode. And then there's also a way using the switch to load the program from the memory card. Now, for those of you who just hate local switches, there is a way in the Seascape program to disable that switch completely, so that if you're not a fan of a local switch like that, you can disable it before you ship the machine. So that capability is there. Now, there's really a lot of I/O built into the CPU250, and we're going to go through that in detail in a minute. But for now, I'll just say that there are 34 built-in I/O points. And even though you don't see them from this photo, each of the terminals on the terminal strip has an LED light pipe internally to it. So you do get LED indication when an I/O point is on. It's not obvious from this photo, but there are light pipes tied to every single point on the terminal strip. And then in addition to the built-in I/O, you've also got the ability to add up to 7 OCS I/O modules directly to the side of the unit through a backplane connector that's included in the box. And so therefore you can customize the I/O pretty much any way you want. That's a lot of I/O capability available there with this product. Now, the little brother to the CPU250 is the CPU200, and it's identical in every way except, and it's pretty obvious from the photo, it doesn't have any built-in I/O. So for those applications where that built-in I/O combination we're going to talk about next just doesn't make any sense, you've got the ability just to start from scratch with the 7 OCS I/O modules, or up to the 7 OCS I/O modules, that it makes sense in your application. Okay, before we dive into the built-in I/O on the CPU250, let's talk about the memory capability from a logic standpoint on both products. So this is an area where these CPU products have more functionality than the typical micro X4, X7, X10. And that is in the amount of memory for your logic program and the amount of register data available, or register or variable data available. So you've got 4 times the normal amount of program memory, or at least 2 times, with the 2 megabytes of programming space. And then you have 50,000 word type variables and 16,000 Boolean variables. So lots of room for variables. You're not going to run out of space, even if you're doing some really significant data logging where you want to also log to internal memory. You've got plenty of memory to do that. And of course, floating point, either 32-bit or 64-bit versions of floating point, as well as 8 PID loops are all supported. So these two CPUs have a lot of computing power or logic programming power. Now let's get into the built-in I/O in the CPU250. So the first 4 inputs, there's 34 total I/O points. The first 4 inputs are either standard 12 or 24 volt DC inputs, or they can use for high-speed purposes, whether that's a quadrature encoder or totalizing up or down, that sort of thing. So the same 500 kilohertz capable high-speed counting you can do in any Micro Series OCS, you can also do in the Micro Series CPUs. After the first 4 inputs, the next 4 are just straight DC inputs, 12 or 24 volts. And then those are followed by 8 more inputs that we call flexible inputs. These flexible inputs can be configured point by point as either a standard 12 or 24 volt input, even a 5 volt input if you have that kind of rare but realistic need, or any of those 8 I/O points can be configured as either a 4 to 20 milliamp analog input or a 0 to 10 volt analog input. So you can go from either having 8 digital inputs and 8 analog inputs to 0 analog inputs and 16 digital inputs, or any combination in between there. So a lot of flexibility there. And those are full 12-bit resolution on your analog, which is, nice for most applications. On the output side, we've got 2 high-speed DC outputs that can be used as just standard outputs, or they can be used for things like PWM or pulse train out, that sort of thing. And then we have 8 other outputs that are just standard half amp DC outputs that have short circuit protection. So good beefy DC solid state outputs there. And then the last 8 outputs are analog, 4 that are 0 to 10 volts and 4 that are 4 to 20 milliamps. So if you have a process style application, you've got 8 analog inputs potentially and 8 analog outputs. And you can run 8 PID loops on that if that's what you need to do. So very versatile I/O for a lot of different applications, especially in the process industry, for things like wastewater treatment and food and beverage and other process heavy type applications. So really flexible I/O built in. And the reason there's so much I/O built in, and frankly, one of the reasons there's so much logic space and variable space included in this product is because this product, and we'll talk about in a minute, ultimately will be able to replace any RCC that's currently in the field, which is our current product line I talked about just a minute ago. Now, if you need I/O other than what's built in, as I've mentioned many times, you can add up to 7 OCS I/O modules to either the CPU250 or the CPU200, either one. Okay, and because OCS I/O is a product line that has a lot of options in it today, it's been around for a few years now, even though we still have more modules in development. On the screen there, I have a sampling of some of the I/O modules that are available. So you can add more digital, you can add relays. You may realistically have a need for some relay outputs. So you've got several different options, I think 3 different modules that offer relay outputs. You can add 16-bit analog inputs that are, geared towards thermocouples or RTDs or other temperature sensors. So there's a lot you can do with this add-on OCS I/O. Okay, now let's talk about connectivity. The connectivity is, for all intents and purposes, identical to what you would find in a Micro OCS in these micro CPUs. So, you've got a serial port built in that supports, Modbus RTU, either a slave or a master. You've got, you can support ASCII protocols. You can connect it to barcode readers, as well as even serial printers for things like receipt printing. You've got the normal protocols over Ethernet, at least the basic ones, Ethernet IP, as a server/I/O device, so not as a scanner, Modbus TCP as a client or a server. And of course, on the CAN side of things, you've got C-SCAN built in for either unit-to-unit communications or adding I/O remotely. I mentioned you can add 7 I/O modules locally, but you can add another dozen or more racks of I/O remotely as well through OCS I/O bases over C-SCAN. So you've got lots of options for expansion there. And then for those of you who are maybe in the automotive world, where J1939 is important, that's available or will be very shortly. That development is in the final stages right now. So it may be another month or 2 before we release that firmware option. But basically, it's right around the corner. And then, of course, CAN Open is available. And CAN Open is kind of a standardized field bus that's good at interfacing with motion and other sorts of things over CAN. And then one thing I want to mention, or 2 things actually, like any other Micro Series product, WebMI is available. You can buy a WebMI license and enable WebMI, so you can do remote monitoring and control from a web browser, whether that's mobile or whether that's from a computer. And then OCS 360, which is our cloud service, is going to be adding Micro Series support later in 2025. And so this product, along with the X4, X7, X10, will also have OCS 360 support as well. Of course, you have to have a subscription plan for that, but that's normal with any cloud service, really. So lots of connectivity options here for these CPUs. As I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, yes, the plan is to work with customers so they can migrate relatively efficiently from the RCC to the CPU250. You know, it should basically, if you look at the chart here on the screen, you can tell that the CPU250 has enough I/O of all the right types. So it doesn't matter which RCC model you might currently be using, it can replace any of those. Now, there is one RCC, the 6512, that's kind of a specialized high-speed counter model. That one is a different animal, but for the other three RCCs, they can all be replaced with the CPU250. And there is, on the way very shortly, there is a really powerful high-speed counter module for OCS-I that goes above and beyond what's built into the micro CPUs to add that really advanced high-speed counting capability to the system. In terms of what markets and what applications you can use these products in, I mean, it's very flexible, as you can imagine. I mean, you use PLCs in just about every market, and this is a really unique, really powerful PLC. So whether you're talking about OEM equipment or, you know, taking advantage of all the built-in analog capability, maybe in a process application like water, wastewater, or in an agricultural application, or maybe food and bev or oil and gas, there's really no limits other than your imagination for where you can use it. In terms of compliance and certifications, for those of you who have heard of BABA, which is a Build America, Buy America program, it's not totally dissimilar from some of the programs that were, you know, around back in like the 2008 and 2010 timeframes. But this is a Build America, Buy America program where, especially for municipal projects or any other projects that have government involvement, those requirements will be there in a lot of cases, and these products meet that requirement. So you have no problem using this product, which is, you know, manufactured here in the US, using global components, but also as many from the US as we can. That definitely qualifies for Build America and Buy America. And then the product has CE mark on it as well. Now, UL has been backed up, frankly, since COVID or even before. So we don't have UL at launch. We aren't anticipating any problems whatsoever. It's just a matter of getting it through the queue. So it's going to be a little while before we can put the UL mark on the product because of a backup at UL. In terms of kind of the information that's available, if you go to our website, you're going to find we've got web pages already up on the CPU200 and 250. We've got technical documentation available. We've also got this, basically this trifold, as we call it, more accordion fold, I guess, because it's maybe more than a trifold at this time. But anyway, we have these accordion fold documents that compare all the different products in a series. And because the CPUs are part of the micro series, it's been added to the micro series or the micro line comparison guide. So you'll find that on our website. In terms of the software that you need to use, really 10.1 of Cscape, Service Pack 1, is really the version you should be using to work with the CPU250 and the CPU200. Of course, later versions as well, if you're watching this on replay. And then I also want to mention that this is really just the first step in what will be several new modular controllers that we're adding to our Canvas and Micro series over the course of this year. And one of the exciting things about the next round of modular controllers is that those modular controllers will actually support a touchscreen component that you can add to the front of the unit. That, again, is not a traditional HMI that has to be configured or programmed or anything like that. It's literally a touchscreen component that you can physically mount and then just connect with a single cable back to the front of the CPU. And for all intents and purposes, you have a fully functioning all-in-one control that's completely modular. Put the touchscreen where you want it, put the controller and the I/O where you want them, connect the two, program one project like you do every OCS project, and you're good to go. So keep your ears open for announcements as we approach the launches of these additional modular controllers later this summer and fall. Now, before we proceed to a couple other announcements and also a Q&A session, we're going to show just a short little 2-minute promotional video that Emily Tedder in our marketing department put together that talks about the new micro CPUs. Go ahead.
Introducing Horner's latest additions to our micro line of controllers, the CPU200 and CPU250. These products bring all the value of the micro line in a compact DIN rail mount package without the local display. The CPU250 features 34 built-in I/O points, including flexible inputs configurable as digital or analog. Need more? Snap-on OCS-I/O modules. Perfect for modular setups, the CPU200 offers the same power minus the built-in I/O. Both are programmed in Cscape and offer advanced ladder and IEC 61131 programming. They also feature built-in compatibility with top industrial Ethernet protocols like Modbus TCP and Ethernet IP. These controllers are ready for nearly any application, including OEM machinery, food and beverage, agriculture, water wastewater, and more. The micro CPU200 and CPU250 are simple, powerful, and more versatile than ever. Please visit HornerAutomation.com for more information or to find your local distributor.
Okay, great job, Emily, on that little video. I thought it would be fun to show that, kind of tie everything all together. Okay, so before we move on to our Q&A session, I have a couple just little notifications to go through with you here today. You know, these are items that don't deserve their own webinar, but it's good to know. So the CNX100 and CNX116 are the two remote I/O bases for OCS-I/O. The CNX100 doesn't have any built-in I/O of its own. The CNX116 has 6 I/O points built in, including 2 that are flexible. And these are the units that you would add when you want to add remote I/O to any of the Horner control systems. One thing we're changing with these two products is we're including in the box the end clamps and the terminating plug that normally you would buy as a separate accessory. Those will be included in the box. So there were too many customers that were just forgetting to order them. And by having them in the box, it just simplifies things for everybody. So that's happening from this point forward with those two products. Just a little bit more in the box, a little less hassle from ordering standpoint. Another piece of Horner product news is something called ATEX. Now, I made the mistake last time I talked about ATEX, not to explain what ATEX was. So there are a variety of certifications when it comes to hazardous locations. There's UL Class 1 Division 2, which is what a lot of us are familiar with here in the US. And then there's ATEX, which is more of a global type spec. Well, for years and years, UL Class 1 Division 2 and ATEX were really not, I wouldn't say in lockstep, but they were very much aligned in terms of their certification. So the fact that we had UL Class 1 Division 2 on pretty much all of our products pretty much gave us what we needed from an ATEX standpoint for those customers that needed ATEX. Now, what's happened is those two specifications they're no longer, quite as close as they used to be. So we can't put ATEX on every product just because it has Class 1 Division 2. So what we've done is we've made the investment with the extra testing and the extra certification for 2 of our key products that are used in the process industry, the XL7 Prime and the Canvas 7D. So all the models within those 2 products, regardless of what I/O you order from the factory that's built onto the back of those products, all those products now are available in an ATEX certified version simply by adding a -450 to the end of the normal part number for those products. So with the XL7 Prime or the Canvas 7D, if you are in the process industry and you have a customer that really cares about ATEX or it requires ATEX, you now have an additional option through one of these 2 7-inch models from Horner. Okay, so that's all the news I wanted to cover with you all today. A couple things I will mention, though, still giving you an opportunity to ask questions if you have them. And that is just a reminder that every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, we have live streams. And what most folks do is they watch them on replay. For the topics that really interest them, they check them out on a regular basis. And we get a lot of good questions and a lot of good feedback based on those videos. And you can find all those videos either on our website by going to the resources tab and going through the video search to find the topic you're looking for, or you can go to our YouTube channel and basically accomplish a similar thing. And then we have a lot of other resources on our website, including for the CPU. We've got product pages already up with lots of good documentation, manuals, those sorts of things. I think we even have the normal 3D and 2D drawings are up as well. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think they are. And then we're also very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with us there. And then another CPU related topic this week. So this upcoming Tuesday, in a few days after the weekend or a couple days after the weekend, we're going to be going hands-on with the new Micro Modular Controller. So we're going to assemble them, we're going to connect to them from Seascape, we're going to run them through their paces using the I/O simulator. We're going to have a good hands-on session, which a lot of you, I think, will enjoy checking that out, especially those of you who didn't get a chance to participate in the beta program. Okay, I don't see any specific questions, so I think we're probably good for today. If you do think of something after the fact, don't hesitate to contact our marketing team at our marketing.mail email. You can also contact me at chuck.ridgway@heapg.com, and I'll be more than happy to answer your question. And thanks everybody for joining us. Look forward to sharing more about these CPUs in the future.